We've often seen in movies and TV that airplane crashes are catastrophic and unsurvivable events. What we see is often an airplane plummeting from 10,000 meters in a big fireball. This isn't the case for most of the airplane crashes. From a report spanning from 1983 to the 2000s, the NTSB National Transportation Safety Board found that the survival rate of an airplane crash is 95.7%. The National Transportation Safety Board found that in more serious accidents, like fire and substantial damage to the airplane, the survival rate was 76% of leaving the accident unscathed. While those odds sounds like the airplane crashes every day, it's a very rare occurrence. There's a 1 in 9 million chance to be killed in an airplane crash, which makes flying one of the safest ways of transportation, unlike traveling with a car or a bike. The first 3 minutes of a flight and the last 8 minutes of the flight are the most critical as they consist of the highest number of crashes, so if you want to fly a more safe flight, pick a big flight as they're more safe than smaller flights as they're built better to protect its passengers and crew. But how do you keep safe when and if an airplane crashes? The first tip is to dress comfortably. If the airplane crashes somewhere where it's cold, it's important that you're able to stay warm but also wearing long-sleeved shirts and pants that covers your body, and you're less likely to receive serious injuries or burns. But don't wear too loose clothes as they have a risk of catching on to obstacles in or outside of the airplane. The second tip is to wear sensible shoes. Sandals or high heels make it hard to move quickly if there's an emergency, and your feet are more exposed to glass or flammable liquids. The third tip is to sit in the tail of the aircraft. Passengers who sit in the tail of the aircraft have a 40% higher survival rate than the others further up in the airplane, so economy is safer to fly than first class. The fourth tip is to read and listen to the pre-flight safety instructions. Even though you might have been through a lot of these before, every flight has different safety instructions. The fifth tip is keeping your seatbelt on at all times. Every centimeter of slack in your seatbelt triples the G-force you'll experience in the crash, so always keep your seatbelt properly tightened. Keep the belt on even if you sleep. You'd rather wake up being restrained than leaving your seatbelt in a rush of G-force. Now you're prepared for the events of a crash, but what about in the events of crashing? Firstly, you'll want to assess the situation. If possible, are you crashing into water or land? This is an important step to know so you can prepare the life jacket and plot the escape route to the exits. Secondly, prepare your space as much as possible. Return your seat back to the upright position and put away any loose items that could become hazardous. Then, assume one of the two standard brace positions used for plane crashes. The two common brace positions looks like the following: bending over in your seat, putting your chest close to your legs, and positioning your hands over your head, and to not interlace your fingers. The other position needs a seat in front of you. To do this position, you'll have to place the palm down into the back of the seat, and then cross the other hand palm down over the first hand and rest your forehead against the hands. Third, put on your life jacket, but don't inflate it in the case of a crash into water, because if you do inflate it and the plane starts to sink, the life jacket will force you upwards towards the cabin roof, and getting out will be even harder. Fourth, put your oxygen mask on before helping others. If the cabin gets compromised, you only have 15 seconds to breathe through your oxygen mask before being rendered unconscious. So, what now when the airplane has crashed and you're on the ground? Well, first and foremost, you need to protect yourself from smoke and fire, if any. To protect from smoke, you can use a cloth to cover your nose and mouth to avoid breathing it in. The smoke from an airplane fire can be very thick and toxic. Secondly, you'll need to get out of the airplane as fast as possible. Locate your nearest exit and make sure there's no other hazards outside the exit, otherwise try the other exit. Third, if you're escaping the plane cabin, leave your stuff behind. There's no need for them as of this moment. Once you're out of the airplane, make sure to get at least 150 meters away from the wreckage to avoid being hurt if there's an explosion or fire. If the crash is in open water, swim as far away from the plane wreckage as possible. Once you're safe from the wreckage, it's a good idea to stay in one place and tend to others that are struggling and not to induce panic. Once everyone is safe and a safe distance is kept, calling emergency services and waiting for rescue gives you a much higher chance of surviving, but you need to stay put. Now that's our tips on how to survive an airplane crash with the highest odds. Hopefully you won't need to use these tips, but it's always a good idea to stay informed.